Ever get this feeling like you're carrying something heavy?
Heavy.
Yeah, not like a physical weight, but something passed down,
Yeah.
from your parents or grandparents even.
Yeah.
It's like a legacy, but not the good kind.
I think I know what you mean.
The idea that those heavy burdens we feel might actually have roots, like roots stretching back generations.
It's true. What your grandparents lived through, what your parents couldn't talk about, it can echo through families,
Yeah.
And in surprising ways. We're looking at a text that unpacks this through history and psychology, even a bit of genetics.
Right off the bat, this article hit me with a Nietzsche quote, and it gave me chills. What the father kept silent about, the son speaks.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes what's left unsaid, that's what has the most power, right?
Exactly. And it's not like some new age idea either. I mean, this concept of inherited burdens, it pops up, even in ancient texts, like even the Bible. But now science is catching up to what our ancestors seem to just know intuitively.
Right. It's not just folklore anymore.
Yeah.
This article talks about studies on the Holocaust, genetics, psychology, like all pointing to the fact that trauma can leave a real mark, a tangible mark.
Yeah.
And it can last for generations. There's even this study with mice.
Okay.
And get this.
Yeah.
The effects of the trauma were seen 4 generations later.
4.
It's
It's incredible, isn't it? It shows just how deeply trauma can embed itself, even at a cellular level. The article uses World War II as a case study.
Yeah.
Imagine children growing up with the horrors of war all around them.
Right.
But on top of that, their parents are dealing with their own unprocessed trauma.
A double whammy
Yeah.
of heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the war itself, right?
Yeah.
The article talks about how harsh discipline was like the norm back then, almost encouraged.
Yeah.
They even mentioned this woman, Johanna, who wrote a popular infant care guide in 1934. That promoted some like incredibly harsh parenting techniques.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
It's unsettling, to
Yeah.
say the least. It wasn't just like a gentle pat on the wrist.
Right.
This was a lot more severe. And you combine that with the backdrop of war, the loss, the fear, the uncertainty.
Right.
It created a breeding ground for unaddressed trauma to fester and get passed down.
So it's like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
But how does this trauma actually jump from one generation to the next?
Right.
What's the mechanism?
Well, the article highlights several ways. One that really caught my eye was epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Basically, your experiences and even your ancestors' experiences can impact how your genes express themselves.
Okay, wait, slow down for a second, because that sounds kind of complicated.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for someone listening who might be thinking, but I never experienced any trauma directly? How could my genes be affected by something that happened generations ago?
That's a great question. Think of it like this. Imagine your grandmother lived through a famine. That experience, that trauma, could actually affect how your genes express themselves today.
Really?
Even though you personally never experienced a famine, it's like your genes carry a memory of those past experiences. And in this case, it might make you more susceptible to certain health conditions. The trauma echoes through your family's genetic makeup.
Okay, now that's what I call food for thought. The DNA isn't the only way, right? What about those unspoken things, the stuff that's never directly addressed?
Exactly. Think about how children learn. They watch their parents. They mirror their behaviors. Even if those behaviors are unhealthy coping mechanisms for dealing with past trauma, it's like their parents' way of moving through the world, even if it's, shaped by this unaddressed pain,
Right.
becomes the blueprint.
A subconscious inheritance.
Yeah.
So even without realizing it, they're learning to cope with the echoes of their parents' trauma.
Precisely. And then there are the unspoken messages.
Cool.
It's the subtle cues, the body language, like the anxieties that just hang in the air, like unspoken words.
It's almost like a secret language
Right.
that only family members speak, but nobody really understands. And then there's the kind of heartbreaking reality of what the article calls unsupportive parenting.
Sadly, that's often a part of the cycle.
Yeah.
Individuals who haven't dealt with their own trauma might struggle to provide that emotionally nurturing environment that their children need.
It makes me think of that saying, hurt people hurt people. It's not intentional, but they might end up repeating those same harmful patterns that they experienced.
And the article delves into how that affects like a child's developing brain.
Okay.
Think about it. When a child experiences chronic stress,
Right.
like having emotionally unavailable caregivers,
Yeah.
their brain gets flooded with cortisol.
Cortisol. Okay, so that's that stress hormone, right? The one that puts us on high alert.
Right, right.
But kids are resilient, right? I mean, everyone goes through stressful things.
You're right. Everyone experiences stress.
Right.
And a little bit of cortisol is actually normal,
Right.
even necessary. It's what fuels our fight or flight response.
Right.
But when it's constant, when that stress response is always switched on because a child doesn't feel safe or secure,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes a problem.
So it's like their internal alarm system is constantly going off,
Yes,
but nobody's coming to turn it off.
exactly. The article compares it to like a kind of poisoning.
Wow.
And in a way, it is
Yeah.
this constant flood of cortisol, especially in those crucial developmental years,
Right.
can make the brain hypersensitive to stress.
Wow. That's a powerful image and kind of terrifying when you think about the long-term impact on those kids. So what does that look like later in life? What are the signs that someone might be carrying this legacy of trauma, even if they don't realize it?
It can manifest in a lot of different ways, actually. They might have a really low tolerance for stress,
Okay.
difficulty forming secure attachments in relationships, even struggle with things like anxiety or depression.
So even though they might be living in a completely different world than their parents or grandparents,
Yes.
they're still carrying those invisible scars.
It's like the past is still present, playing out in their lives in ways they might not even consciously understand.
Right, right.
But here's the good news.
Okay.
Awareness is the first step.
Okay.
The article emphasizes that talking about trauma, like bringing it out of the shadows,
Yeah,
can be incredibly powerful.
that's hopeful.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that we can start breaking these cycles? What can people listening today do to start unpacking those heavy burdens and heal those generational wounds?
It starts with acknowledging the possibility that we might be carrying more than we realize.
Yeah.
Sometimes just understanding like where these patterns come from can be a huge relief. It's like, oh, it's not just me. It's this legacy I've inherited.
Right. Like those subconscious habits or reactions that never quite made sense.
Yeah.
Something they click into place. It's like, yeah. So that's where that comes from.
Exactly. And from there, it's about seeking support. Therapy, support groups,
Right.
even open conversations with family members.
Yeah.
The article emphasizes that children who have a safe space to process their emotions, especially during difficult times, they grow to be far more resilient.
It makes sense. Like having that support system in place can make all the difference in the world. It's like having someone there to help you turn off that internal alarm system when things get overwhelming.
Precisely. And the article makes a great point about how this isn't just about individual healing.
Yeah.
It's also about societal change.
Oh, wait.
We need more awareness, more resources, more understanding around trauma to really tackle this issue.
It's like we have a responsibility to break these cycles.
Yes.
Not just for ourselves, but for future generations.
Yeah.
So that's a heavy thought,
It is.
but also empowering in a way.
It is recognizing that we have a choice in this, that we don't have to be prisoners of the past. That's incredibly powerful. We can choose to heal, to grow, and to create a different legacy for ourselves and our children.
It's about rewriting the narrative.
Yes.
Changing the ending to that story that's been passed down for generations.
Exactly. It's about understanding that while the past might shape us, it doesn't have to define us.
That's a powerful message to end on. So for everyone listening, if you're feeling that weight on your shoulders, that legacy of unspoken burdens, remember this. You're not alone, and there's hope.
There is.
It starts with awareness,
Yes.
understanding, and with reaching out for support.
And remember, healing is possible.
Yes.
You have the power to break those cycles and create a healthier, brighter future for yourself and for generations to come.
We'll leave you with that thought-provoking idea to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into intergenerational trauma. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.